Welcome, American literature friends. This is the second part of the Emily Dickinson discussion. I'm going to cover 5 more poems here. I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Dies, which is often numbered 591. Much Madness is Divinest Sense, 620. My Life Had Stood a Loaded Gun, 764 is the common number for that one. 935, As Imperceptibly as Grief. And 1773, My Life Closed Twice Before It's Closed. So 591, 620, 764, 935, and 773 are the common numberings for these poems. Dickinson's poems are usually numbered because she never gave them titles. And so they're usually described either by the numbering or by the first line. Like I Heard a Fly, this poem is often referred to as I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died. This is another dramatic, intense dramatic scene, moment, a poem. And it is the moment of death. So it's obviously this intense, emotional, dramatic scene. I heard a fly buzz when I died, and it's like the person dying is there is a sort of hyper awareness of their surroundings, of the sensory experiences, including this sort of what would normally be insignificant, but because of this hyper intensity of the moment, this person dying hears this and is hyper attuned to it. I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. That is, if you want there to be a deeper meaning to this poem, it is in the between the heaves of storm, because this is the moment between one life or one world and the next for this person dying. They're making a transition out of this world and into the next world. And so they're between the heaves of the storm of this life and the sort of experience of the next life. And they are having this hyper intense moment as it's a transitional moment. The eyes around had wrung them dry. The people around gathered around the deathbed crying, and breaths were gathering firm for that last onset when the king be witnessed in the room, the king of death, mortality, the person that rules all human life. I willed my keepsake, signed away what portion of me be assignable. That's another sort of deeper meaning. Signed away what portion of me be assignable. Like I had willed to the appropriate people all the parts of me and the parts of this life that could be willed. But the parts of me that couldn't be willed are moving into the next world. And then there interposed a fly with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz between the light and me. And then the windows failed, and then I could not see to see. And so this person's last sensory experience before they exit this life is this minor sensory experience of hearing the fly buzz, and then they transition out of this life. They have this one last little sensory experience, and then they transition out of this life. So there's this juxtaposition of the intensity of the moment and the sort of insignificance and smallness of this last little sensory experience. But that's what you're getting here, is this intense dramatic scene, the last moment of this person's life, which is taken up by this little sensory experience. The next one is a definition poem that has to do with madness and the definition of madness, and she argues that the definition is totally subjective. This is a definition poem. Much madness is divinest sense. Much madness is divinest sense to a discerning eye. So a person, a person acting crazy or acting silly or acting mad, if you understand where they're coming from or understanding what they're trying to do, it makes sense to a discerning eye, to a person who can understand what they're trying to do or say. Much sense is the starkest madness. And so, like, if you don't understand what somebody's trying to do, it comes across as madness, even if they know what they're trying to do. Tis the majority in this as all prevail. So it's just the majority that gets to define or decide what madness is. Assent, go along. Consent, assent to the majority, and you are sane. Demur, turn away from the majority, and you're straightaway dangerous and handle with a chain. So she was making this argument that madness and sense are these sort of subjective definitions that have to do with what the majority think is madness or think is sense. It has to do with it's this subjective perspective. So it is this kind of definitional. She's making this argument that madness is subjective. The definition of it is subjective. My life had stood a loaded gun. This is often understood to be one of her more scientific poems. This poem that is interested in the late 1800s when she is writing in the scientific concept of potential energy versus kinetic energy. The sort of the loaded gun is the potential energy, and so like a gun is this sort of, if you understand a loaded gun versus a fired gun, you understand potential energy versus like kinetic or active energy. And so she takes that and uses that idea to argue that her life is a loaded gun. It's full of potential. It's full of potential energy, but only rarely does it get the actual, the kinetic energy. My life had stood a loaded gun in corners till a day the owner passed, identified and carried me away. The common understanding of owner is like God, or God giving meaning to your life, or something like that. Again, if you want to read this religious meaning onto it with the capital O, owner. And now we roam in sovereign woods, and now we hunt the doe. And every time I speak for him, that's the gun going off, the actual energy, the released kinetic energy. The mountains straight reply. And do I smile such cordial light? Open the valley glow. It is a Vesuvian face had let its pleasure through. And it is this sort of pleasure of being used, of finding meaning in life, of finding use, of like being able to release your potential into real energy, realized energy. And when at night, our good day done, I guard my master's head, 'tis better than the eider duck's deep pillow to have shared. To foe of his, I'm deadly foe. And again, it is that like finding meaning, finding use in life. None stir the second time when the potential energy is released into kinetic energy. On whom I'll lay a yellow eye. The yellow eye is a sight on a gun, if you know how guns work, or the sort of basics of the parts of a gun, or an emphatic elbow. Though I than he may longer live, again, though I than he may longer live, he longer must than I, for I have but the power to kill without the power to die. And so she is contrasting the gun, which is mostly potential energy, rarely put to actual use, rarely released, versus the mechanical life versus the human life, which is much more actual, physical, played out energy, but will technically last shorter because the gun could last longer because it's just a mechanism that could outlive human life. So she is making all these connections and contrasts and thinking about the distinctions between kinetic and real energy, and between potential and kinetic energy and things like that. So there is this scientific concept that she is then applying to mechanical and human lives and actions. As imperceptibly as grief, number 935. This is a seasonal poem. This is a poem about the summer and nature, but it is also this intense dramatic scene because it is about the end of summer. As imperceptibly as grief, the summer lapsed away, and so summer gives way to fall and then into winter. Too imperceptible at last to seem like perfidy. A quietness distilled as twilight long begun, so like the twilight of the year, the end of the brightest part of the year, the end of summer and the coming of fall, the twilight of the year. Of nature spending with herself sequestered afternoon, again, like the end of the day, the late afternoon. The dusk drew earlier in, so dusk being like fall, sunset, the sunset of the year. The morning foreign shone, so morning, pardon me, the morning foreign shone as courteous yet harrowing grace, so morning, the spring feels far away, now it feels foreign. And thus, without a wing or service of a kill, without a wing or service of a kill, that is, wing is a bird, kill is a boat. Without a wing or service of a kill, our summer made her light escape into the beautiful. And so it is the end of summer. Summer slipped away from us, summer flew away from us or sailed away from us, even though it didn't have a wing, even though it didn't have a boat. Our summer made her light escape. Summer slipped away from us, escaped from us into the beautiful. It went into the ether, into the nothingness. And so this is this intense dramatic moment, but it is the moment of the end of summer and the sort of acceptance that summer has gone, fall is here, the year is turning toward the end of the year. And then our last poem, the last of these, my life closed twice before it's closed. This is a short poem, only 8 lines. This is a intense, dramatic scene, and when you get to the next to last line, you understand the intensity of it is parting. This is a poem about parting, about being parted from somebody or losing somebody going out of your life one way or another, either because they died or because they left, like a relationship ended. My life closed twice before it's closed, and so she is saying losing somebody feels like your life closing up. My life closed twice before it's closed, and so she's saying like it felt like I had died, even though I haven't literally died yet. My life closed twice before it's closed. It yet remains to see if immortality unveil a third event to me. So she's wondering if she'll have another intense connection like this, or intense parting. Like it yet remains. We'll see if I have another intense event, intense relationship, intense loss, or ending or parting like this. So huge, so hopeless to conceive as these that twice, the two that I've already gotten, as these that twice befell. Parting is all we know of heaven. And so parting, to be parted from somebody that's important to you, that you love, like you obviously have had heaven for it to feel so intense when you part, when you go your separate ways. When it comes to an end, and it feels so intense, it is obviously you've had some little bit of heaven before you part. And then parting is all we know of heaven, and all we need of hell. The like ending, the parting, the going our separate ways is a kind of hell. So you have the heaven of being together, the heaven of the connection, and then the hell of losing that connection and being parting. I hope that helps you understand these 5 poems. I heard a fly buzz. Much madness is divinest sense. My life had stood a loaded gun, as imperceptibly as grief, and in this one, my life closed twice before it's closed. Hope that's helpful to you. Hope you're doing well. I hope you have enjoyed Emily Dickinson and these 3 kinds of Dickinson poems: the definition, the proposition, or the intense dramatic scene.